My name is Dirk Nel.
And when were you born?
Ermelo in the old Transvaal.
On the 2nd of May.
The 2nd
When?
of May, 1917.
1970.
Can I just give you a short picture of when I was at school, Ermelo? It was an entirely Afrikaans-speaking community. I grew up speaking 3 languages. Zulu was the #1 language until I was the age of 4. I only spoke Zulu, then Afrikaans, and then afterwards German.
When did you join the Air
That's
Force?
right. Now, I didn't join the South African Air Force immediately. I wanted to become a doctor. There were only 2 universities that taught medicine, and that was Wits. My English was non-existent, and therefore I couldn't go to Wits or Cape Town University. I then went to Pretoria University, where I took up a veterinary surgeon, because the first year veterinary surgeon is the same as medicine. I went to university in 1936. I passed the first year, and shortly after I started the second year, my father wrote from Cape Town to tell me the war is coming. I had to get up in the air. I then wrote back to him and said, I cannot manage 2 things at the same time. He wrote back and he said that I must be a coward, and he was very disappointed in me.
It doesn't make sense.
No, but that is just my father.
Why would he call you a coward? Because you didn't want to do
I
things?
didn't want to go to fly, because there was a government scheme, a new government scheme, taking pupils from every city, 5 pupils from every city, and every university had 5 pupils.
But why would he call you the coward? That's what I'm asking.
I don't know.
Because you...
That saw me through the war.
Didn't you want to go and fly?
That saw me through the war, because every time I thought of getting frightened, my father was behind me.
Okay.
200 applications came from Pretoria University. They wanted 5. I weighed less than 100 pounds. My English was non-existent virtually, a little bit better. And I had this crocodile skin, so I satisfied. I applied, and I was one of the 5. Excellent.
Byłem jednym z 5, który jednak przyjęto.
Then I started flying, still at university.
What year was it?
No, 1936.
Still
1937. 1937. I found that coming back from my flying period, back into the classroom at 8 o'clock, I fell asleep. I realized I couldn't do both.
Zrozumiałem, że nie da rady poprowadzić.
I wrote to my father and I said, I'm bailing out of university, because the flying apparently came quite easily. But let me just fill in. I had done 2 hours instruction at the time, and with the instructor telling me that I was killing myself, and I was going to kill myself, and that I was useless, and he was cursing me, you know, the big normal army language that they used. And so after 2 hours, I told him that I'm full-time university, I'm bailing out from the fire. So he says it's not as easy as all that. I had to be tested by the senior officer, Colonel Tasker, of the South African Air Force. He took me up for 15 minutes, came down, and he said I was way above average. What is my problem? So I told him, I said, but this is a surprise to me because the instructor's standing next to me. I said, but he's telling me that I'm useless and I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
So the instructor apologized. We became friends afterwards, and I flew back to the club.
And then you flew to what club?
To the training club. It was
To the training school,
It was not an Air Force base. It was given to private clubs for the training of these
really?
selected people. And when we got to the club, he got out of the aircraft. He said, "All right, off you go." So I went solo in 2.5 hours. It was then that I decided to leave university, and my father told me that you're on your own now. And I got a small job, and I flew whatever and wrote all my exams. I completed all the exams, all the training, and became a flying as instructor, as well as my civil aviation license within 10 months.
What happened to you when the war broke out? Were you already in the Air Force or not?
I got a transfer from the South African Air Force a month before war broke out to South African Airways. See, I had applied as soon as I qualified. I immediately applied for BOAC and for South African Airways.
But was it in 37 or 38?
In 38.
Okay.
As soon as
so you went into civilian flying, am I right? First?
No.
So how did you get? Where were you?
When I qualified,
yes,
I applied for a short service commission. That means a 3-year period that you can serve in the South African Air Force. That is the first time I came. I got into the South African Air Force.
And that was 3 years, you see.
That was in 1938.
So in 1938 you applied to join the South African Air Force?
Yeah, in January 1938 I applied, when I got my wings, I applied for the South African Air Force.
Okay,
for the three-year commission.
Simple answer. What happened when the war broke in 1939? You were at the Air Force at the time.
No, I was South African Airways. I got a transfer months before it all broke out.
Okay.
My application was accepted for South African Airways.
That's fine. When did you come back to the Air Force now?
Immediately after war broke out, I was back into South African Air Force. And having been an instructor, I was immediately instructing the people on our new bombers, or the Junker 86 passenger aircraft that was converted into a bomber. And when Abyssinia came into the war, or rather Italy became into the war,
Włosi włączyli się do wojny?
I pulled all the strings possible, and I got out of instruction, and I went through the Abyssinia campaign.
What other campaign did you take part at the time, other than Abyssinia?
After Abyssinia, I was attached temporarily to the #1 Royal Australian Air Force ambulance unit, where I took the South African ambulance to do ambulance work in North Africa.
What was the name of that squad, of that?
#1 Royal Australian Ambulance Unit.
Was it something else before you get to the
Before
squadron?
that, I did the shuttle service, flying from South Africa to Cairo, taking personnel and equipment and whatever.
That was after this Australian story.
I was also during the flight instructing my the co-pilots that they gave me to train them at the same time on the route. Now, can I just when I was in with the Royal Australian Ambulance Unit, the Lodestar that South African ambulance went unserviceable, and then they allowed me to fly their de Havilland's 86. That was their Australian passenger aircraft that was converted into an ambulance. And I then did a lot of work with the Australian aircraft and under their command. So it came about that two of us went out, and five Dornier bombers came back from a raid, and they attacked us. I didn't know about this, but they shot the Australian down, and I was on the ground flying merrily, and the next I just heard boom, boom, brr, brr, and looked up, and the first Dornier went across. He missed me. How he missed me, I don't know. But in any case, I turned, and four of them attacked me, one after the other.
The aircraft,
It was the Havilland 86. The Havilland 86. After this, I said no, it's no more for me. And I was pulled back. I was then the private pilot of the Chief of the Air Force, General Venter.
South African Air Force?
Yeah. I didn't like it, and fortunately General Venter liked me very much, and I said, please, just get me out of this. So I was appointed as private pilot to Brigadier Gert Miller.
Who was that Gert Miller? What was his rank?
Who?
Gert Miller, who was he?
Brigadier. And that I didn't like either, and I went back to General Venter, and I said, please, no more of this, let me get out of this. And I joined 24 Squadron, the 8th Army Air Force. The aircraft were Bostons.
A samoloty nazywały się Boston.
I was pulled out of that for a while to fly General Frank Tron to all the fighter squadrons. I completed the tour. I didn't know I was pulled back from to Cairo for a while, and when I got to Cairo they told me I've overstepped my number of raids.
What year was that?
1943, round about April round about.
Okay,
that.
And you've been still flying this general to the fighting squadrons.
No, I had
and then
now,
you bailed out.
I
from
had now
that
completed my tour in 24 Squadron.
Okay.
Although I had gone quite a number of raids over my quota.
Mm-hmm.
And they refused to let me fly any more.
Right.
So they pulled me back, and they said I would have to go back to South Africa. And
so
I
you
said,
had to go back.
Well, now this is another story, if I may just fit it in. That I went to the head of the South African Air Force, Colonel.
So you came back physically to South Africa in the meantime?
No, I was in Cairo.
Ah, you're still in Cairo. And then?
I asked Colonel Henderson for his private aircraft. And he looked at me and he said, I don't want to know what you're going to do. Take the aircraft and get out of my office.
But how? Why did you ask for this?
Then I went to the matron of the South African hospital, and I asked her to give one nurse that I knew 10 days leave.
And then what happened with this nurse and you?
So she was given 10 days leave, and she wanted to know what was going on, and I said, pack as minimum luggage as possible, but one essential object that you've got to take with you is a toothbrush. Now, we took the colonel's private aircraft, and we loaded up our bedrolls and our food and
ten samolot pułkownika.
Primus stove and all the necessary things.
Wszystkie takie
and
niezbędne rzeczy.
For 10 days we visited various old airfields that the Germans had and we had and the Germans had, etc. At one airfield there was a lot of equipment that the Germans had left, and there was a Junkers 88 bomber.
Was it a bomber, the Junkers?
Yeah, the German Junkers 88. When I got back to Cairo,
Kiedy wróciłem do Kairu,
I approached Colonel Henderson again and I said, your aircraft is safe back.
Mówię, że jego samolot jest w porządku.
I've got another request. I want a 3-ton lorry and I've got 8 names of engineers, aircraft engineers. He said, now what do you want now? I said, I want. So we loaded up and we repaired this Junkers 80.
Aha, czyli
While testing it,
kiedy
and
żeśmy sprawdzali go,
I opened up and took up and flew beautiful. Now the German
do
markings were still
samolotu.
on. So the one engineer standing behind me, he tapped me on the shoulder. He said that E is for empty, not for enough. The fuel gauge was empty.
I wtedy jeden z inżynierów, który za mną stał, jak wzięliśmy w tym...
So I went, Merzimetru was very close by, and I went straight for Merzimetru, clean forgetting, this is a harbour and had an airfield, and clean forgetting about the German marking still being on the aircraft. All I saw was guns
I w tej
following.
chwili widzę, że otwierają chłopcy.
I put the wheels down and flaps out and landed. As we got out of the aircraft, they were standing there with the machine guns and what have you, and they said, oh, these goddamn South Africans again. In any case, I flew that aircraft to South Africa, and it was placed in the museum, in the War Museum for...
do południowej Afryki. Is it still existing there?
No, it broke up.
Okay, how did you get to this 31 Squadron, Colonel?
Oh, no.
Because that's where we get
31 Squadron.
Bo w tym, because this is the direction we're getting
Yeah,
at,
well, it's an awful long story. According to your faces, I did enjoy the war.
What a lovely war!
I did shuttle service again, and
Przez chwilę znów byłem przewoźnikiem,
I got
przerzucając
back,
ludzi.
say, April in 43, and then I did shuttle service.
Około kwietnia
I had the rank of
43 roku.
major then.
Byłem w stopniu majora już.
And in April 1944,
I w kwietniu 1944 roku
the South African Air Force got its first heavy bomber squadron.
lotnictwo południowoafrykańskie otrzymało wreszcie po raz pierwszy ciężkie bombowce.
And they were liberators.
To były liberatory.
And I was at that stage very junior,
W tym
according
czasie byłem, prawda, dosyć
to
niskiego
the
stopnia
permanent force people and
w
people
porównaniu do
that
ludzi
were my
ze
instructors.
służby czynnej, którzy byli jego
And
instruktorami.
well, I had the honor then of forming and commanding the first heavy bomber squadron of the South African Air Force. What turned out to me a very sad and a very tragic situation was that all my friends, some of them were preschool friends and university friends, start the Air Force friends. They all, when they heard I got the squadron, they all applied to come to 31 Squadron. And they were all lost.
I wszyscy niestety stracili życie.
Our losses were from the start extremely heavy.
Cały czas mieliśmy bardzo duże straty.
Because we were doing work, to my mind, that the Liberator was not suited for that type of work. I would like to make it clear that the South African Air Force got its original equipment from either Britain or from American, really. But
Lub z Anglii.
after we got the equipment, we were left on our own.
Ale jak
We
już
had to
nam dali
steal,
ten sprzęt,
scrounge.
to już nikt...
We were allowed 1 bottle of hardtack a month per officer.
What's hard, tak.
Hard liquor, brandy or gin or
Tak.
whatever, or
Przydział,
whiskey. We had at the time 120 officers. I told the quartermaster officer and the adjutant, cook your books, indent for 150 bottles of hardtack. The adjutant, who was an advocate before the war, he said, are we going to on a drinking spree? So I said, this liquor is not for drinking. This liquor is because the Americans had no hardtack. 2 bottles of hardtack got us a brand new engine.
Mówi, za 2 butelki whisky, za 2 litry
Amongst other
dostaliśmy
things.
nowy silnik do Liberatora.
We got food. The Americans had wonderful food, absolutely.
Mieli wspaniałe
Fantastic.
żarcie Amerykanie.
But we used that liquor really got us everything that we
Ale
needed.
dzięki temu Okay, let's maybe lady ask you.
Yeah.
No, so we now jesteśmy teraz już,
Yeah,
prawda?
yes.
We are in Italy. You are commanding officer of 31 Squadron. Probably lady would like to know a bit more about Warsaw Uprising. So how many people and aircraft did you have under your command in 31 Squadron?
We had 20 aircraft
20 samolotów
with
mieliśmy.
8 flying crew per.
8 flying crew.
per
So 20 times 8, 160.
Yeah.
Plus some other personnel?
Well, you've got ground personnel. You had
plus-
your quartermaster's stores. That is your foodstuffs
Yeah,
and
so-
blankets. And what.
Were you under the British command?
No, South African command. The Group 205 was Brigadier Durrant, who was a South African.
But it was RAF
But
group.
we were allied. We were not under the
British-
RAF direct command.
Not really.
We were under the Allied command.
Did you take any interest in the political situation of Europe at the time?
Not at all. Politics is out. Always
Zupełnie
been
nie,
out
nie
for me.
jestem politykiem.
Not interested.
Czyli nie,
If I may,
That's okay.
you've asked this. My father was against the war. My father was
Ojciec był pacyfistą.
General Smuts. Everybody knows,
Generał Smuts, czyli to
was in
wielki
command.
dowódca południowoafrykańskiego.
And my
Znaczy i Armii Lotnictwa, czyli w ogóle obrony narodowej.
my father was a friend of General Smuts, and he wanted to
Ojciec był
discuss
przyjacielem generała Smutsa, który był
certain-
wtedy naczelnym wodzem. O, to
certain
dobre.
issues, and he took me along. And when General Smuts saw me, of course, he knew my father was against the war, and he said to my father, "Now, what is he doing in uniform?" So
Okay, all right.
my father said, "Well, he'll answer the question himself."
To niech on już sam odpowiada na to.
nie miał pan większej
You
wiadomości
didn't
na
have
ten
too
temat.
much of the knowledge of where is Poland, what the whole story is.
None at all.
Zupełnie nie.
No, wybuchu powstania.
And when did you learn about outbreak of the Warsaw Uprising?
Virtually the day we were called upon to see if we can assist to fly supplies to Warsaw.
Who gave this kind of order and briefing?
Oh, this came from headquarters, from Brigadier Durrant from 205 Group.
Kiedy to było?
And when was that?
Gee, I can't give you the exact date, but that was the middle of August somewhere. It was.
Yeah.
I think.
Well,
I
you
think
flew-
it came about when the Poles asked for
Assistance.
Yes.
Yeah. How was the task described to you to do?
Well, we were told to fly to Warsaw. We worked out a route. I immediately said that where are the Russians? And the Russians were reported to be on the Vistula. I suggested that we ask for an airfield as close as possible on Russian territory so that we could fly maximum supplies. That was refused.
Odmówiono nam tego.
We then had to work out maximum supplies with sufficient fuel, and we allowed only 10 minutes reserve fuel.
W związku z po wykonaniu zadań.
The 9-hour flight there and back, we spent about 8.5 hours over heavily defended enemy territory. My words were at the time, it's a mission impossible.
Powiedziałem oczywiście wtedy.
We had to fly at the time, just my personal position, when we started operating. I flew raid for raid with all the crew, the other pilots. And after 6 weeks of operating, I was grounded by headquarters. I was still commander of the squadron, but no more operational flying for me. So when we started with the uprising, I immediately said, I'm going. And they refused.
A oni odmówili.
And the first raid, they went and they came back, or some of them came back. And then I said, I am now definitely going. And I told the wing commander, Colonel Williams, said, if you're going, I'm also going. I said, well, then we've got to keep it a secret.
As far as we know, you are not very much for flying to Warsaw, and you have actually objecting to it.
No. That comes later. That comes later. At that particular, in the beginning,
Na początku.
that is why I wanted to go, because I said that our losses are too high. Our intelligence is not correct. That is why I wanted to go. I was refused to fly, and Jim Williams and myself did the briefing. We got in the aircraft, and Jimmy Darren came along and he pulled us off. The question that you asked, and you asked that I was against the Warsaw, it came about when Churchill said that military-wise it is of no importance. It is for the political future. It is then, I said that Churchill must risk his own life for his own political future and not expect voluntary South Africans. Of course, we carried on. We still supplied and went to Warsaw after that. But that is a statement. That is that was my objection, but not actively.
Would you remember the total losses which you incurred?
No, unfortunately, that is also a figure that I wouldn't
Nie,
like to
dokładnie
quote.
nie, to, ale ja mogę z tych, prawda, powiedzieć, że did you have any objections from the crews
No,
to
never.
go on to the mission?
An RAF, Royal Australian Air Force crew, not on the Poli before the, or was it after? I'm not quite sure there. But a Royal Australian Air Force crew had to go with the mainstream, branch off, do a job and meet with the mainstream back again for protection. And this Royal Australian Air Force crew refused to fly. That was the only incident that I had where people...
Pojedynczy przypadek.
Otherwise it was from South Africans, never, ever.
Afrykańczycy nigdy nie odmówili. Would you remember what were the impressions of the people after coming back from the flights? Of the airmen, in other words, of the crews. Have they shared the impressions?
Well, they just said it was, from the moment they went in, it was a blank until they managed to pull away. And I can fully appreciate, and I did fully appreciate that because of the work that I did in the Western Desert. What it was like to go in at 400 feet with your flaps down and 140 kilometers, that even with a pea shooter you could hit the Liberator.
Yeah.
It was incredible. But they came back, those that came back, they went again.
Did you realize how badly needed those supplies were for the uprising at the time?
Yes, I fully appreciated the fact because of the Russians pulling back from the position that we got from intelligence, that they were right on the Vistula. And they weren't there, they were quite a number of kilometers further east.
How, from the today's perspective, do you evaluate this Warsaw concerto on your own and maybe on your own, właściwie osobiście, no bo
To me, it was incredible that the people that rose up in Warsaw were not a military unit.
dla mnie było
They
to
were
niezwykłe.
civilians. And when they were caught, they were shot because they had no protection under the Geneva Convention, because they were civilians and children and
Tak,
women.
czyli
And that is why, as I said once, Johannesburg, at our commemoration, that we that served in 34 and 31 Squadron are so vastly honoured.
I dlatego powiedziałem warszawiaku.
That we are included in the heritage
że
of this brave
w ten
nation.
sposób przedostaliśmy się do annału historii Polski.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much, Dirk.